So, verse 40, just as the tares are gathered up and burned with fire, so shall it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send forth his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all stumbling blocks and those who commit lawlessness, and will throw them into the furnace of fire. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteousness will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. He says those tares that are in our lives are the sons of the devil. He says there are those who may have the trappings of religiousness, or who may appear to be good people, but they are not sons of the kingdom. He says the field itself is the world, and in the world there will be those who are part of God's kingdom, and there are others who are just right beside them who may have some similar characteristics, who have nothing to do with the kingdom at all. And because of that, we have to be patient, because they, in being here with us, will seem to take away some of the nutrients that God is trying to give to us, that they will live on some of the good things God is doing. And God says, be patient, because in the end, I will have the last word. He's speaking to our innate sense of justice and revenge. We love to take revenge. But he says, don't do that. He's already told them with one another to be forgiving, just as we saw this king who had forgiven his worker $1 billion debt, but the worker wouldn't forgive a co-worker a few $1,000s in debt. He says, because Jesus has forgiven you, then you are to be forgiving to those who are part of the kingdom family. But he says, this is a different picture. This is the world itself, and you're surrounded by evil, and that evil will be deceptive. He says, but be patient and let me take care of it. There was a pastor who said he would never take revenge. He would just look at those who needed justice and say, I'm going to tell God on you. Because he knew God was the perfect avenger. There's a story that I read this week and talked about during the Korean War. There were several American troops in one particular establishment, and they had hired a young Korean boy to work with them and for them to help cook and clean and take care in their camp. And they began to love this boy and his work, and to see that he was fairly naive. And so they would do different things to kind of goad him. They might put a bucket above the doorway, and as he walked in, the bucket would fall and dump water on him. Or they might nail his shoes to the floor, and as he tried to put his shoes on, he might then fall. And they did a number of different things to kind of get at him. But the longer he worked and the more patient he was, they began to feel a little bit a little guilty about it. And so one day they called him and they said, well, we want to apologize. We know we've done a lot of things that just aren't right. And so we want you to know we're going to stop that. He said, so you mean that there'll be no more buckets of water on the door? They said, that's right. He said, and you're saying that you're not going to nail my shoes to the floor anymore? They said, that's right. He said, okay, then I won't spit in your soup anymore. He'd been getting revenge all along, and they didn't know it. And there is that part of us that it innately wants to just get back at the evil that is around us and those who are attacking us. But Jesus says those who are in the kingdom are patient. They wait on God's timing, and they wait on his power. He says there is evil and it is deceptive, but let me handle it. Several years ago, I bought a book at the local Christian bookstore by Chuck Swindoll. It's called The Tale of the Tardy Ox Cart. Tale of the Tardy Ox Cart. And it's a book of about 1,500 quotes and illustrations. And I've had this book for probably 10 years, if not more. And I've never read The Tale of the Tardy Ox Cart. I've always wondered, why is it titled this? It's got to be in here somewhere. And this week, in God's timing, there it was. Guess what heading it was under? Patience. Under the heading of patience, he tells the tale of the tardy ox cart. And I want to read it for you. It says, there once was a fellow who with his dad farmed a little piece of land. Several times a year, they would load up the old ox-drawn cart with vegetables and go into the nearest city and sell their produce. Except for their name and the patch of ground, father and son had very little in common. The old man believed in taking it easy. The boy was usually in a hurry. He was the go-getter type. One morning, bright and early, they hitched up the ox to the loaded cart and started on the long journey. The son figured that if they walked faster, kept going all day and all night, they'd make market by early the next morning. So he kept prodding the ox with a stick, urging the beast to get a move on. "Take it easy, son," said the old man. "You'll last longer. But if we get to market ahead of the others, we'll have a better chance of getting the good prices," replied the son. No reply from the father. Dad just pulled his hat down over his eyes and fell asleep on the seat. Itchy and irritated, the young man kept goading the ox to walk faster, but the ox's stubborn pace refused to change. 4 hours and 4 miles later down the road, they came to a little house. The father woke up, he smiled, and he said, "Here's your uncle's place. Let's stop in and say hello." "But we've lost an hour already," complained the hotshot. "Then a few more minutes won't matter," replied the father slowly. "My brother and I live so close, yet we seldom see each other." So the boy fidgeted and fumed while the two old men laughed and talked for almost an hour. On the move again, the man took his turn leading the ox, and as they approached a fork in the road, the father led the ox to the right. "The left is the shorter way," argued the son. "I know," replied the old man, "but the right is much prettier." "Have you no respect for time?" the son asked impatiently. "Oh, I respect it very much," the father replied. "That's why I like to use it, to look at beauty and enjoy each moment to its fullest." The winding path led through graceful meadows, wildflowers, and along a rippling stream, all of which the young man missed as he churned within, preoccupied and boiling with anxiety. He didn't even notice how lovely the sunset was that day. Twilight found them in what looked like a huge, colorful garden. The old man breathed in the aroma, listened to the bubbling brook, and pulled the ox to a halt. "Let's sleep here," he said. "This is the last trip I'm taking with you," snapped the son. "You're more interested in watching sunsets and smelling flowers than in making money." The father smiled. "That's the nicest thing you've said to me in a long time." A couple of minutes later, he was snoring as his boy glared back at the stars. The night dragged slowly. The sun was restless. Before sunrise, the young man hurriedly shook his father awake. They hitched up and went on. About a mile down the road, they happened upon another farmer, a total stranger, trying to pull his cart out of a ditch. "Let's give him a hand," whispered the old man. "And lose more time?" The boy exploded. "Relax, son. You might be in a ditch sometime yourself. We need to help others in need. Don't forget that." The boy looked away in anger. It was almost 8 o'clock in the morning by the time the other cart was back on the road. Suddenly, a great flash split the sky. What sounded like thunder followed. Beyond the hills, the sky grew dark. "Looks like a big rain in the city," said the old man. "If we'd hurried, we'd almost be sold out by now," mumbled the son. "Take it easy. You'll last longer," replied the father, "and you'll enjoy life so much more." It was late afternoon by the time they got to the hill overlooking the city. They stopped and they stared down at it for a long, long time. Neither of them said a word. Finally, the young man put his hand on his father's shoulder and he said, "I see what you mean, Dad." They turned their cart around and began to roll slowly away from what once had been the city of Hiroshima. Some of you know the story of Hiroshima. In World War II, it was one of 2 cities on which we dropped an atomic bomb. The ox cart was tardy in its arrival, and because they had been slow in getting there, they survived. Had they been there at the urging of the son and his impatience, they would have died. God says, "Trust my timing and trust my power, because I know all and I have all power. Let me be the avenger in your life."